Gary, just when we thought we might not win another game after North Dakota, we're able to man up and beat Indiana. And now we're going to Rutgers, and they're not a great team. Are we on a bit of an upswing here? What's going on?
Well, again, man, like I said in the last video, I think it's going to come down to if Nebraska can manage Nebraska. We clearly have the better players. I'm sure any Rutgers fans say they're going to lose their minds and remind us of the records and everything else, but that's understandable. Nebraska lets very mundane things get in their way in games in years past. So I'm hoping that the short week going all the way to the East Coast, things like that, things that you would typically want to worry about and think could be an issue for them, hopefully are no longer a problem. It's another conference game. I really want to see the entire team build off of what improvement we saw last week. Things got a little murky and messy there for a while in the middle of that game, and they overcame that. Like we said before, it wasn't a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. There's plenty of things to work on. I'd like to see him clean up a few more things or maybe start taking some more steps in another direction, but at least maintain that momentum that they built last week going into this week. Not to look too far ahead, but then you've got an extra day before you play Illinois the following week, which depending on what game of theirs you pick, they're up or down, but I think it's definitely a winnable game as well. So yeah, I mean, there's legit reason to think that we could put together a little thing that other teams like to call a winning streak before we have to worry about, Purdue and get over into the other side of the schedule with Minnesota and teams like that. But
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that every time we say we should probably win, we lose. So that's not lost on me.
Well, what did you think last week going into that week?
Thought we were going to lose.
Yeah, I thought the game would get messy and be a close loss. So we'll see.
I wish I could say that I had faith, but it had been broken and trampled on at that point. Last year, Noah Vedral comes to town and claps our cheeks. Seemed pretty happy about it. Are we going to have to suffer more of our former quarterbacks shining while we're down? Is there any chance we lose to Vedral again?
I don't think we're going to have to worry about Vedral or really either of their quarterbacks hurting us. Vedral played for the first time last week for the season, and all he did was run the ball because that's all he had been doing in practice since he'd been coming back from his injury. And is kind of their guy, and he's not much of a rusher. They still run him kind of when they can, or, they don't veer away from, they run a lot of RPOs and spread offense, things like that. But unless they got a trick up their sleeve and Vedral's healthier than they let on, knowing they probably didn't have a chance against Ohio State, and they want to pull him out with us only having last year's game film to look off of. Like I said, I don't think Wimsatt's going to be good to go. If he is, who knows how close to 100% he would be. But I mean, I think they're going to have to do what they typically do and kind of throw the kitchen sink at you as far as personnel goes. They have a lot of guys that run the ball. A lot of the receivers run. A lot of times they shuffle in the different quarterbacks when you think they're going to run, and they try to do little check down passes. And guys you think would run, like I said, they go do a lot of stuff out of RPOs. So I don't think Vedral's going to be able to play a full game and hurt us or do much. But I'm sure we'll see him. But I think it's mainly going to be those two, unless for some crazy reason Wimsatt is good enough to go and they try to run him out and see what he's got.
So they run a 4-man nickel front, very similar to our own. Any playmakers on their side of the field that we need to worry about?
Yeah, they don't have anybody that jumped out to me, at least. The linebackers are pretty good. They have a good chunk of tackles. Their nickel seems to be pretty good. He has 4 or 5 pass breakups. I think he has an interception. I know one of the safeties had a couple picks, but they have some guys, obviously. But looking at the games that they played, you see where a lot of the stats, where they've gotten them. The first 3 games, they played Boston College, Wagner, and Temple. They look good against those 3 teams, but then Iowa's offense is absolutely horrible this year. And they allowed, I think, 26 or 27 to Iowa. Ohio State hung 49 on them, and they predominantly ran the ball. I mean, they threw it around a little bit, especially early on, but their running back had 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, there's nothing. That's Ohio State. That's a legit national powerhouse, not just a Big Ten stud team. But I think our offense will be about what it's been, consistent, be able to move the ball. If the line's doing its thing and Casey's getting the ball out quick and leading guys, I don't think Grant's going to have any trouble running on them. I don't think there's a lot to really worry about or concern with on the defensive side. Again, I keep going back. I hate to keep saying the same thing, but if Nebraska can do its thing and take care of itself and do what it's supposed to do and not shoot itself in the foot, I think it'll be fine. Honestly, really both sides of the ball.
I'm ready to see Casey Thompson have a breakout game statistically, but if he doesn't, if we just run the ball and win that way, so be it. I'm fine with that. Let's have Anthony Grant, carry the ball 40 times. And then also I'm really excited for Mickey Joseph because once again, like we said, this is a winnable game. I'm excited for him to stack wins. And like we said in the beginning when he took over, if this guy gets us to 5-8, we're really going to have to consider keeping him. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that Oklahoma happened and then this stretch of game and not Oklahoma in the middle of these games or maybe even in Minnesota in the middle of these games, because these are the types of games that now you can look at in the way we thought the first 3 games of the season were going to be. We thought we were going to have those gradual warm-up games to kind of get gelled together and get the system implemented, all the new players, all the new coaches, everything to kind of fit together and gradually build and hopefully win, but see what happens on that Northwestern game. And then you've got 2 supposed gimme games to keep building, improving on. That obviously didn't happen. Basically squeaked out one, and then you lost the other one, and then you got ran over by the train that was Oklahoma. But being able to make some fixes, make some adjustments, that bye week I think was incredible for them. Perfect timing. If they can build off of that little bit of momentum they got from Indiana against a team that I don't think Rutgers would beat Indiana. I mean, especially if they had their 2 receivers back, which people would argue they would have beat us anyways. But I'm just saying, like, you got this game, then you've got Illinois, who there's arguments to be made of whether or not that's a easily won game or not, but they're not a powerhouse. You know what I'm saying? So I think these are nice conference games, so they're going to be competitive, but they're
quality wins.
They're going to be quality wins, but they're not real powerhouses that we have to worry about. Okay, Wisconsin the last few years or Iowa the last few years, all of a sudden now that's who you play coming off of one of these games. You got a steady dose of a couple weeks of very winnable games where they can work on the things they need to work on and try to build momentum and continue the building process going into the meat of the schedule, which is the second half of the schedule. And hopefully by then the momentum's been built enough and things are instilled enough that it's not like, well, I hope they can maintain it. Hopefully they can just keep building on it. You know what I mean? Like right now, I think what I'm looking for is, can they maintain what they improved on to look like they did last week? Can they build on that a little bit?
Better teams might look at us calling the Rutgers a quality win, but to us, it's a quality win. Any Big Ten win is a quality win when you've been where we're at.
Well, the Big Ten's not looking good this year, especially the West. You know what I mean? So and that's fair. And I know we got ripped by Big 12 fans when we were talking about their coaches and talking about that conference. And, we even said, or at least I said in both of the videos, not saying all these teams suck and they couldn't beat any teams in the Big 12. The conference is going away. Coaches leave for bigger jobs in this conference and the SEC. The teams are leaving for the SEC and other things like that. I'm talking about the conference as a whole and the longevity of what's going to be that. So with where we're at and who we have to play, like, yes, going back to what we talked about before, I think the last video about the possibility of winning the West. You and I both think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse at this point. But yeah, you do have to beat Rutgers and you do have to beat Illinois if that's going to continue to be a thing. So in terms of long-term for the season, long-term for Mickey Joseph keeping his job, the other guys on the team keeping their jobs, these are quality wins, so to speak. If this would happen at a different time in the season and they come out and beat North Dakota and they come out and beat Georgia Southern and everybody gets excited and then they turn around and lose to Oklahoma like they did and then lose to Indiana and then lose to Rutgers, those are bad losses. You know what I mean? So it's like, to your point, we're saying quality with a grain of salt. Nebraska just needs to get back to where they're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat. And this is, I think the schedule is very generous to them right now for where this rebuild process is for Mickey Joseph.
Well, dude, I'm freaking stoked for Friday. Cannot wait. We get a Friday night game.
Are you worried about that at all?
No.
Because I think previously any little hiccup that happens for Nebraska turned into a big thing. So, I mean, the 1 day shorter schedule, the long travel, they're not just buzzing down to Oklahoma or up to Minnesota or whatever. They're going to New Jersey that night, whatever. Like, I don't really think so either. I hope not, but it is kind of in the back of my head of like, who knows, man? It just seems like, not to keep pounding this dead horse, but you go back to how the entire game supposedly was ruined by a failed onside kick in the third quarter against Northwestern. It's like, if something that little is derailing you, and they've shown over the years that it doesn't take much to throw them off. But I go back to this last week against Indiana when things kind of got flipped on their head when Purdy had that sack fumble for a touchdown. It's like, all right, man, they overcame it. So I'm just curious, man. I think I'm excited to see if this is for real the beginning of a turnaround. I think we'll definitely be able to find out, but it's just good to see some things out of the norm kind of getting thrown at them to see how they handle it.
Let us know in the comments if you'd like us to go live after the game for Rutgers. We're pretty much planning on that. We'll see you guys then. Go Big Red.